And this particular one, I'm going to do neurodivergent strength. And so this will be a bit of a explanation of the chapter in my book, The Elephants in the Classroom, which is all about strengths, and it'll go into it in more detail in the book. But to just give you a 10-minute introduction to it, then that's what I'm doing here. I don't know if you know of a famous lady called Temple Grandin, who is a university professor in the States and is highly autistic. And her quote is, "Visual thinking is a tremendous advantage." And that's something I totally subscribe to. It really is a tremendous advantage. And you can do all sorts of things with it. I mean, can you imagine doing a pole vault? Most people can't imagine doing a pole vault, but can you imagine picking up a pole, running along the track, putting it in the right place, visualizing how to climb up the pole and then go over the other side? It's just really difficult, and without a visual memory where you could practice that, I think it's going to be really difficult. So lots of people who are really talented have got amazing mental imagery, and every neurodivergent person I meet, then I think that they've all got amazing mental imagery. It's very, very rare I find one who hasn't. There may be reasons why, if you can't find mental imagery, then you've turned it off because it got too overwhelming in your younger days. But most of the time, they've got amazing skills. So I'm just going to run through a few of the amazing skills just to give you a taster, really. One is creativity. Amazing creativity, great imagination, great at new ideas. And of course, with creativity, there is a whole range from being really creative to being exceptionally creative, up to being not very creative. So there's a whole range of degrees. It's not about intelligence. It's about a general, I think, a tendency to approach a dilemma with a commitment to find a new solution to it. And that's what these kids mainly do. And what you're doing in finding a new solution is building your knowledge, and you're also building the knowledge of others. And you can have things like spelling is a great skill, which is using imagination. But there is also, with all of these, there is a balance. You can overuse them or you can underuse them. So if I look at creativity for a moment, if you overuse it, what's that like? And you may think of some of your students at this point, or some of your kids. They'll come out with crazy ideas. They'll be really energized about them, but they might overwhelm other people. They also need some perseverance to get things done, because otherwise they're just flitting from one thing to another all the time. And that can get really frustrating. So that's what is like, it becomes overuse. Underuse means they get closed off, rigid, authoritarian, overly critical of themselves, self-doubt. And so you need to find a balance between using your amazing creativity and not overwhelming other people with it. And as I say, that can be a frustration often. The frustration for me, because I work a lot with neurodivergent students, and I'm fantastically enthusiastic about them and what they can do, and other people may not see it, so that can be frustrating for me, or it can be overload for other people. So you guys who are on the call are doing really well. You're still with me. You're not being overloaded yet. Okay, problem solving is the next one. Lots of different ideas on problem solving and making connections. And so problem solving affects your memory, your ability to be able to remember things, your ability to be able to connect different facts together, collecting information, doing lots of research into things that really enthuse them. And if you've got a child who is on the spectrum, you'll probably find they've got some amazing enthusiasm for collecting information. It might be on dinosaurs, or it might be on owls or something, but they're nearly always collecting more information on it. Concentrating can be a bit of a challenge, but connecting facts because they're busy connecting the facts together, and they may lack that concentration to keep on task. But they come up with new insights as to a solution to the problem, and they're using quite often a bit of intuition. So that's some of the problem-solving things and amazing skills. Some of the other amazing skills, big picture thinkers. And I was thinking about big picture thinkers earlier today, and I was thinking they can see the forest as well as the individual trees. So if they're utilizing their perspective, then they're lost in the detail. They're looking at something really, really small, and they may be overwhelmed by the whole picture. But if they're overusing it, it may be overbearing, because you don't want other people to, you want to talk about the whole picture if you're a big picture thinker, and they want to talk about the details. This one happens, by the way, all the time with literacy, because if you've got a big picture thinker, they like whole words. They do not like phonemes, because phonemes have no objects associated with them. You know, R doesn't do anything for them, whereas ball with an A in the middle is absolutely fine. And so they like the big picture rather than the tiny bits. And of course, if you're overusing that skill of being the big picture thinker, you may be boring everybody else. Different perspectives. The amount of people I've met in the construction business who can look at a building, they can slice it and dice it, and they can see what's inside it. They can see it from different angles. They're looking at it from different perspectives. All really useful skills, which may not be shared with other people. You've got the gifted and talented. In the UK, we used to have a sort of gifted and talented program going on in schools. I think it's fallen by the wayside even before the lockdown. But what we found with the gifted and talented kids was they were highly visual thinkers, and they could do lots of really clever stuff, but they were finding it really difficult to do the mundane things. And I always say about gifted and talented, they're the sort of kids that when they're in university, they find the difficult things easy. When they're in school, in primary school in particular, they find the easy things really difficult. So just to give you a flavour of some of the people that you've no doubt heard about before and how they visualize things. There was Albert Einstein, who had the most amazing ability for coming out with completely new scientific ideas. There was Michael Faraday, who was another 19th century physicist, he managed to visualize non-visible electromagnetic fields, which I think is quite cool. There's Richard Branson, one of our famous business people, entrepreneurs, who founded the Virgin Group. And if you ever look at Richard talking on a video, he's always looking up into his visual fields. There was Erin Brockovich, who is now president of the Brockovich Research and Consulting, and she was involved in a case against Pacific Gas, and there was a film made about it. It was very interesting, but she didn't have, her level of normal qualifications was quite low, but she could really see what needed to be done. Steve Jobs, who was known as the co-founder and CEO of Apple, and I'm just reading his book, which is actually it's a book written about Apple. It's not written by him, and it talks about how to simplify everything and how the world has got more and more complicated, and that's the raison d'etre really of Apple. Then there's Jamie Oliver, famous cook and entrepreneur in the UK, and I was talking to him once about whether he visualized what the food was going to look like before he made it. And he looked at me and he went, "Do you think I don't?" And he had perfect pictures of exactly what he was making. And the Ingvar, I probably can't pronounce this, Campard, who was the man who created IKEA. There is wonderful mind maps online about this guy who was a completely visual creative thinker. And so I do recommend you take a look at those. And a book I've been loving recently, which is called the Fire Institute of Character, because quite often people say to me, well, how do I find my child's strengths? And I go, well, just talk to them about what they're good at. And that used to be my standard phrase. And once you get them talking, for example, I'll give you an example, a lad in secondary school here in special needs school who was 11, and he'd been in the class for 6 months, and he hadn't written anything down. He hadn't written any words, he hadn't read any words, but he was obsessed by dinosaurs. And so when I went and saw him, and I didn't know he was obsessed by dinosaurs, I should point out, he was sitting at a table and he got his hands like that cupped round bits of plastic that he'd torn off the front of his folder. And I said to him, "What are you doing?" And I didn't know, he didn't really speak very much. And so I looked over the top and I said, "Is that a dinosaur?" And he went, "Hmm." And I said, "Why have you got your hands around it like that?" And he went, he looked at me with one of those looks is that I have no idea why this woman doesn't know the answer to this. But anyway, he just pointed at the open window and I went, "Oh, if you take your hands away, they'll blow away." And he went, "Mm-hmm." So I said to him, "Can you visualize that dinosaur?" There was a bank of grass outside the window. I said, "On the top of the bank of grass." And he went, "Hmm?" And then I showed him a post-it, which is how we teach kids to do literacy. I showed him a post-it of which had T-Rex written on it, and I held it up in front between him and the picture on the bank, and he went, and I said, "Can you put that on the dinosaur?" And he, "Okay." And then I said, "Can you spell, when I take it away, can you spell T-Rex?" And no word of a lie, this boy spelt Tyrannosaurus. He then managed to spell it in reverse order, which was even more surprising. But he had this amazing ability to visualize things. And when his teacher came back in the class the next day, I was talking to her about what had happened to this little lad, and she said, "Do you know, if I'd been here, I'd have told you don't talk about dinosaurs, because he talks about dinosaurs all the time. That's his special area of interest." So that's how I used to find out somebody's area of interest, by just asking them what they like doing, or in this lad, by just observing what he liked doing. But there is something called the Fire Institute of Character, which I find really interesting, and it comes up with 24 character strengths. And the best thing to do is for free, is to open it up, fill in your character strengths, and then look at the top 4 and see what you think. There is much in this. There is actually a book that goes with it, but you don't need it. There is much in the book about the good side of a strength and the bad side of a strength. And if I take, for example, honesty. Now, you'd think if number 1 on somebody's chart was honesty, this would be a good thing. That's what the normal adult human would say. But can you imagine? But if you've got any autistic children or students, you'll probably know that blinding honesty can be a nightmare, because they say exactly what they think. They don't filter it at all for what they should be saying, and they just come out with it. And so what you do is you have to find this balance between underusing something and overusing something. So I don't disagree. Honesty is a good thing, but it can be slightly disarming for other people. So that's what I wanted to cover today. And so that's my usual 10-15 minutes. And for those of you who are interested, the morning one next week, I'm going to talk about children not being born dyslexic, which is normally a total surprise for people because they think they've been born that way. So that's an interesting topic which I thought I would share with you next week. That's on the 9 o'clock call next week. Haven't decided what to do on this call, but I will tell you before we get there.